with a Business is brought to you by Audible.com.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Married with a Business. I'm Craig.
And I'm Allison.
And we're Married with a Business. We're here to share some tips and tricks about what it's like to be a married couple that own and operate a business together and those kind of things.
Yeah, it's fun to share things that we're learning and that we're going through with everybody else.
Yeah, no, it totally is.
So, Craig, what's been going on lately?
I was very excited the other day.
Very excited.
I was very excited the other day. I kidnapped you.
That's not a good word.
I know. The other day, I kind of put together and planned sort of an unplanned, spontaneous day of you and I together. Played hooky from work.
I love spontaneity.
Yeah, you had a hard time with it. Let's be honest. So the day before, Thursday, I was like, oh, you know what? I don't have a ton on my plate for tomorrow. I can push a couple of things to Monday. I was like, I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm going to make Allison come with me to go on a bike ride, and I'll take her out to breakfast. Then we'll go shopping together. We'll hang out for, a half a day. It wasn't like anything extravagant, but
you didn't tell me what we were doing.
I didn't tell you anything about what we were doing. Right. I just kind of was like, okay, put clothes on that are warm and that you can go for a bike ride in.
Yes.
How did you feel about it?
Overall, it was fine. It was cold. It was like 40 degrees out. I think I had a good time.
Yeah.
Let me preface by that. It was nice. It was really great that you wanted to spend quality time with me. I was not prepared for the elements, and that made it difficult.
Yes.
Things I would have done. There are just things I would have done differently had I, one, had more time to prepare, or two, had time to prepare. So
spontaneity, not a thing to drop on you.
Well, or like now that I've biked in the fall in New England in 38, 40 degree weather, like if you said it again, I'd be like, okay, now I know, because we've just never done it before. So
yeah, it was a little cold.
I didn't have gloves. I didn't have a hat. Like it just, I didn't think about the fact that like when we were running errands afterwards, I would still be in all my bike stuff, like literally didn't bring a change of shoes. So I was in my biking shoes. So no, it was really nice. It was breakfast afterwards was great. There were just moments where I thought I was going to die.
It wasn't that bad. You were fine. No, I just wanted to try to do something that was, spontaneous, something different. And part of that stemmed from the fact that I had just finished the book 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, and thought that, maybe I know that your love language and my love language aren't anything about time necessarily or spontaneity.
Sometimes, though. I mean, I think you still want all of these things, but not necessarily. It's not your primary focus.
Yeah. And so, I thought, hey, it would be fun to do something like that.
It was fun.
Yes, there were things that could have been better, but I thought it was a good time.
It will definitely be a day that's memorable, and we'll talk about
Well, I think you're on the hook for the next one. I think that's the difference now.
Oh, man.
I now did one, so they think you're on the hook for the next spontaneous days.
I don't think life has to be tit for tat.
You don't know. I have to do all of the, okay.
Yes.
So anyway, this week we are talking about the book 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And Allison, give us a little bit like of an overview of what the book is about.
All right. So I'd never even heard of this book, and it's not new. It came out in like 1992.
Right.
My sister has in the past referenced my niece's love language, which is not apparently getting cards. Like I didn't know what she meant. She'd be like, she doesn't need the card. She doesn't need a birthday card. Just hand her the present. She doesn't. So she doesn't value that as a way of showing love. Other people do. Your mother really appreciates and wants to get a card, so the way people recognize love and how they show love or want to be shown love is different. My parents are gift givers. So I think that sometimes they show their love by giving gifts. But we all recognize how we feel loved differently. So the love languages, the book is called The 5 Love Languages, How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate. And it was written originally in 1992, and it kind of outlines 5 general ways that people express and experience love, which the author calls the love languages. And it's words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, quality time, and physical touch. And so those are kind of like the 5 major categories.
And I think it's interesting over the 30 years of the life of the book, it's kind of exploded. And now, now you can go online, 5lovelanguages.com. You can take a test, figure out what your love language is. There's other versions of the book. There's 5 love languages for children. But I think what was neat about it for you and I going through the exercise, is it made me at least think a little bit more about, okay, when it came out, so my love languages is words of affirmation, right? I like to be told how great I am.
And mine's an act of service.
And it was interesting for me to think about, okay, well, that makes sense. That makes sense that that's mine. I don't love touch. I don't really like for people. I like to do my own thing. So it was interesting to kind of see how all of those kind of came out in the test. And I think what was the most interesting about it is I think about, well, I like to get words of affirmation, so I show my love language to people as words of affirmation. I tell them how great they're doing. I'm very much a positive reinforcement kind of person with our employees, with you, with our kids. But that's not always the right way to approach giving somebody their love language. You have to learn their love language in order to communicate or make them feel better.
Right. And what Gary talks about is we are most likely to try and use our love language on other people. But if that's not their love language, it's falling on dead ears. And so in the book, he talks a lot about, primarily married couples, how, they come to him and they talk about, well, I'm always telling her how pretty she is and how great she is and this and that. And she doesn't care. But her love language is acts of service. And so if you're not doing acts of service, it's not that she doesn't care. It's that that's not how she feels fulfilled.
Well, and I think about it in our relationship, and it's actually in a lot of ways has made me think a lot more about, and we've been together for over 20 years. We've worked together for 20 years, and it made me think a little bit more about sometimes how I do, I am not a great acts of service person for you sometimes. And it's little things. It's not necessarily big things. It's not like you have to do big giant things. It's little things like, picking the laundry up off the floor. You've had it before where you've talked about the putting the laundry away, and it totally falls into your acts of service, bucket.
Well, and I even think about our morning ritual and our morning routine, wake up routine and morning routine. Like I get up, I come downstairs, I make your coffee first. And
that's you doing an act of service for me.
And you don't care.
No, I don't care. You're absolutely right.
I want positive reinforcement that I made you coffee every day.
Right.
And if I come down first, no one ever makes me tea.
Right.
And it makes me feel bad.
Right.
It really does. It makes me feel bad that I get up every morning and make you coffee, but if you get up and come downstairs first, you don't even think to make me tea.
Right. And you're absolutely correct. You're right. But you'll come downstairs and I'll be like, did you have a good night's sleep? Are things going okay? I want to talk to you about it. I want to, make sure you feel good. I want to give you, if you didn't sleep well or if you did sleep well or whatever's happening, that's the challenge with it is we think in our own love language.
Right. And so, if you go to 5lovelanguages.com, the website has a really succinct way of explaining it, that when we feel disconnected from people we care about, life can be really lonely, and that utilizing these kind of 5 ways to look at how our personalities, it's a simple and effective way to strengthen your connection so you can experience greater joy and harmony in all of your relationships, not just your romantic relationship. And it's true if you kind of think about, take a step back, and it's kind of like the DISC personality profile. We've used that as ways to talk to people. This is another way to lead people and to engage with people just by being a little bit more self-aware.
Yeah, and I think that, when you think about, and we've talked about it in a lot of different ways. We've talked about how we do the DISC test at work, and that's one way, and we talk about it with our personalities. And I think that this just kind of continues to build on top of that. Allison, is it allows you to continue to be better at communicating. In this case, with your partner is where the main focus is, but you're right. It can work with anybody.
Well, and I think that if you are struggling in any relationship, it's a good way to rebuild that relationship. So your love language is words of affirmation. And what does that mean? That kind of means expressing affection and appreciation through words, whether it's spoken, written, texts. How do you know if this is your love language? Do you thrive on being told you're appreciated, that you're great, that you're loved, that what you did, that you did a good job?
Exactly. Like, I want to hear, hey, you're go get them. Like, that's the very like raw sort of background. And I think about it for me, I grew up in a house that I think words of affirmation was the primary love language in the house.
Oh yeah, your family told you how great you were all the time.
Right. But I mean, but you're not wrong. Like that, I think that's we weren't a big touchy-feely family. I mean, we were normal, but like.
But what is normal?
But what is normal, right? But I mean, it wasn't like I wanted hugs all the time. I mean, like, we talk about our oldest son. His love language is touch, right? He wants hugs. He wants to be loved. He wants to feel that love. For me, that wasn't what I grew up in my house, and I mean, I grew up in a fairly blue collar, sort of existence. So it wasn't gifts. I wasn't getting tons of gifts all the time. I feel like our youngest son, I think it's gifts. Like, all he wants is stuff.
But gifts doesn't necessarily mean buying you like big expensive things. You got to remember, like, it's not just the stuff; it's the meaning behind the stuff.
Right.
The thought that went into it. It's not necessarily diamonds and luxury cars. Signs that giving gifts is your love language is when it comes to gifts, you put thought into it, that you treasure everything that your partner gives you, whether it's big or small. And you're hurt when someone you love doesn't communicate or commemorate an event with a thoughtful token.
Yeah. So I think for you, it's acts of service. We've talked about this. Your love language is acts of service. What do you think the genesis of that is? I
thought about this last night. I think that I have only felt like I have a place when I'm doing stuff for other people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I had a hard time making friends as a kid. And so when I joined a group or an organization, my only value to them was doing stuff, being the secretary, taking the notes, doing everything. And that was the only reason people had to talk to me.
Right.
And so I kind of think that that's where it came from. Started.
Do you feel like after going through this exercise and understanding like acts of service is your love language, does it sort of change your perspective on how you approach things?
I think over the last couple of years, my perspective has been changing, that I don't have to be doing stuff for people for them to like me.
Well, and we've talked about it in relation to Michael Hyatt and his Living Forward book about how like we needed to do a better job of saying no to things, that and more you than me needed to do a better job of saying no to things because you were involved in 50 different things and you were just strung out and you felt exhausted and your time was so minimal.
Yeah, and I think that was my way of quote unquote making friends and getting people to recognize me. And I think that probably it does also go back to like my household. My mom started law school when I was 3, and then she worked in the city. And so when I was little, and my dad was working a job that he was far away. And so I think that when I was little, that was how my sister and I sometimes got positive reinforcement too. Like if I cleaned the house or Christine cooked or, that because it was things that they didn't have time to do, that's how we got attention from them sometimes.
Right. Yeah, I just think it's interesting. I think as it relates to you and I and our relationship, and it's funny because I will say, like, one of the tough parts about being a married couple that own and operate a business together is a lot of times, and I think this is common with everybody, a lot of times the business is the focus. You work on the business. You work on making the business better. You don't work on the marriage as much.
Right.
The marriage is there. It's there. It's part of what's there, right? So this gave me a little bit of pause for us to be able to sit and look at the marriage.
I don't need Christmas presents. If somebody gets my car detailed for me, that would be great.
But like, I think when thinking about it in relation to you and I and communicating with each other, I think it's interesting because I definitely feel like most of what I try to do is most of what I try to do for you is more of that, words of affirmation, that trying to make, build you up and make you feel good.
But when you make dinner and feed me, that's the best.
That's every night. I do that every night. So you get you are guaranteed an act of service every day from me with making dinner. But do you feel like, that's a good one though, do you feel like it becomes stale after a while? Like it's just expected act of service?
Yeah, I think sometimes.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
But I always, every night, thank you for making dinner.
I know, and you try to make you have the kids do it too, and some nights I have the kids help me make dinner. So if one of our kids helps make dinner, it's funny because we make the other child and you will say thank you, Craig and son, for making dinner. So,
and I think that also comes back to my mom's love language is probably words of affirmation, because although she wasn't around to cook dinner every night, when she was, nobody said thank you, and she would always prompt for that thank you. And so I always remembered that, and I always made sure that I did it with you guys.
From there, the other two love languages that we really haven't talked that much about so far, quality time, which we kind of touched a little bit on in the beginning, is that, the person's love language is they just want to spend time with you.
But undivided time,
Right.
Not time where we're sitting on the couch and you're on your watching TV and you're on the phone.
And you and I talk about this all the time because, I think pretty much every day we sort of, quote unquote, finish our day. We usually watch a show, if it's a half-hour sitcom or something on the couch, depending on our time. But it's not, and we've had this conversation. We actually talked about it the other day. It's not quality time. It's just sort of like our wind down time.
Yeah. Time and quality time are two different things, right?
Right. And I think that's sort of where, that whole idea of taking you the other day and going for the bike ride and the breakfast and we never go grocery shopping together, going grocery shopping together for an hour. I think for me, that was a little bit of hey, we never do quality time. We should try to do quality time after listening to this book.
Right. Because just being in proximity to each other doesn't get the job done sometimes. And it affects your libido. It affects your the way you communicate, and it doesn't have to be your love language to be necessary. You just because it's not our primary love language, we still need to spend quality time together.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. When you go to 5lovelanguages.com and you take the test to see what your love language is, it gives you percentages of each one. So you, for both, you and me, our highest percentage was the two that we've talked about.
Right.
But I think for us, I think quality time was up there.
I think that was second on my list.
Yeah, it was second or third on my list as well. So I think that, you have to also remember that, you're not just, words of affirmation or whatever. You could be words of affirmation and quality time. You're a little bit of all of these. And the last one that we haven't talked about yet is physical touch, which is exactly that. We talked about our oldest. This is very much his love language.
Right. And we're not talking about non-consensual. We're not talking necessarily about sexual touch. It's just physical touch that's appropriate.
Yeah, it can be implicit or explicit, but it could be one of those things where I just come up and rub your back or
a
hug, right?
Or a kiss, or just cuddling next to each other, laying on resting on each other. Sometimes that pressure or that feeling of somebody else.
And it's interesting because for me, this came up extremely low. I'm not a big, and I think this has changed for me, to be honest with you. I think years ago, I was much more of a touchy-feely person.
No.
You don't think I ever was?
You've never wanted to hold hands in public,
No,
hug
true.
in public, those kind of things.
Yeah, I'm not a PDA kind of person for sure.
But and even though it's low on my list, a lot of times what Gary talks about in the book is, even though we're not necessarily talking about sexual physical contact, especially for women, sometimes you need the physical touch so that you can get into that other stage.
Yeah, to get into the mood, if you will.
Right. You can't go from nothing to just wanting to be in bed in terms of love languages.
And I think it's interesting. I think it's one of those things where when you look at all of these love languages, sometimes they need to mix a little bit, right? So sometimes you need to have the quality time to get your physical touch up a little bit if it's low. So I think that those are, when you think about the difference of of all of those. I think you have to think about, like, you're not just one. I think we have a hard time with our team, and it's something that we need to work better on, is we use the disc profile a lot with our team and Almar. And I think it's really hard because they sometimes grasp onto it and they're like, well, I'm a C, so I need this,
Right.
this, and this. And I think sometimes you have to remember.
I do that.
You do that. And I do that too. I do it too. I'm a high I, so I'm always like, woo. And so I think that part of it is that you need to do a good job of understanding everybody's a mix of these. It's how that mix works, you know?
Right. And so one of the things we're going to do in the next couple months is we do like a potluck lunch where we do like a lunch and learn. And we're going to do this. We're going to talk about this. Because I think that if we add knowing what their love language is and how they want to be appreciated into their disc profile, that we will continue to build a better team.
Yeah. So I think it's a great book, Allison. And I think that, we need to think about how we can take care of our love language.
If you go online, there's lots of like images and memes of how you can express and really kind of understand it. I think that reading the book or listening to the book on Audible is a great way to start.
Absolutely.
But there's, how do you get started with it? How do you communicate? How to take actions, things to avoid, like words of affirmation, things to start doing is to leave unexpected notes or texts. If you and your partner aren't in a great place, just starting to build those things will help the conversation get started.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting when we read the book that, a lot of the examples that Gary Chapman used when he was, writing the book were people who were like super far apart from each other in their love language and in their marriage. There were major issues. There was talk of divorce and all of these things. And I thought it was interesting how he used and obviously for the book, he used examples that it worked, right? It brought people back together. And I think that, it is one of those things that you don't think about. You think about what the problem is, what the issues are, but you don't think about, well, she never, ever tells me how great of a job I'm doing, or she never, ever, gives me a hug. And I think that it gives you the opportunity to go, well, what am I not doing?
Right. He uses the analogy of a gas tank, your love tank. What have you done to pour into somebody else's tank?
Right. So I think it's really, really awesome to check out. 5 Love Languages, by the way, is available on audible.com. You can download it, listen to the book. It's a good listen, short listen, only a few hours. And you can get a free 30 days of Audible on us. Just visit audibletrial.com/bizmarried. That's audibletrial.com/BIZ married. Allison, I really think that this was an important book for us to listen to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's, again, another layer to helping us communicate and working together at home and at work.
And I think that, it's also one of those things I realized in doing little things that it's not a light switch, right? It's not like nothing is. There are very few things that are like it changes instantaneously. This is one of those things that it makes us, you and I, focus back on our marriage and what are some of the things that we can fine tune and do a little bit better. Can I do a little bit? And I like the other morning, we got up. I never make the bed, right? I very rarely make the bed. The other morning we got up. What did I do?
You made the bed.
I made the bed. And I'm thinking, okay, those are the little things that I need to get better at. Those are the things that matter. They don't matter to me. Like the bed could be unmade all day to me.
No.
But those are the little things that matter to you. And so I need to tweak and do those things better because it's more, it's trying to do for the other person what's going to make them feel a little bit better. Check it out, 5lovelanguages.com. See what your love language is. Do it with your spouse.
Do it with your spouse. And even if you don't have a spouse or a partner, do it for yourself, because there are ways, once you know what your language is yourself, you can take better self-care as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Check it out. And check out our free Audible trial. You can get, like I said, free 30 days of Audible. You can listen to 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. It's audibletrial.com/bizmarried. And check us out online as well. You can find us. Don't forget to follow and listen and all that kind of stuff. Tell your friends. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram @bizmarried, or you can find us on Facebook. Just search Married with a Business. And we have a website as well, marriedwithabusiness.net. Allison has a lot of information on it.
Yeah, I'm always trying to update it. And as we post new episodes, post new resources for you guys.
Yeah, so definitely check that out, marriedwithabusiness.net. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week with another show. And remember, not only is it important to focus on your business, but also your marriage, because we're Married with a Business.